I want to bring in now former FBI Special Agent Executive Katherine Schweit. Katherine, you heard that discussion with Ryan. We know there are so many questions that we still don't have answers to. It is still early hours, obviously. We're less than 24 hours now after this happened. But we still don't know things about, like, for example, the motive, the names of the 9 other people who were killed here, the kind of weapon used, where the shooter got it, how this ended, any kind of surveillance footage there may be, any kind of connection between the suspected shooter and this supermarket itself. From this list, Katherine, what is your number one priority? What would investigators be zeroing in on now? And how soon do you think we could get some of these answers?
I think the highest priority right now is to make sure that the victims are taken care of, the survivors are taken care of. Even though there may be X number of bodies laying in that building and beside it, there are a huge number, as you just listened to Ryan, there's a huge number of other survivors of the shooting. And Colorado community has a huge and very supportive, layered services for victims and survivors. So really the living is who you want to tend to right now. But from an investigative standpoint, the investigators have a lot of those answers probably right now. How many people, what kind of weapon. Probably the last thing they'll have is motive. And truthfully, motive is the one that everybody wants, but motive isn't going to resolve an issue that we have right now. The surveillance cameras that'll be in the front of the buildings will show us exactly what happened. The eyewitness testimony, which there is a lot of, law enforcement has, and their job right now, working with the local other law enforcement officers, state and federal resources to pick up the evidence properly. They have a live suspect who's likely going to be charged in this situation. They have to have a very keen, capable team that is out there picking up and gathering all the evidence together so they can have, you get one time to pick up the evidence. And that's what they're doing right now, picking up the evidence, checking all the video cameras, and they're pulling all that together. And their job now as investigators is to build a timeline. The timeline, what happened before the shooter came into the parking lot and then into the building, and what happened afterwards.
People may not know this, Katherine, but you were actually the person who was one of the folks in charge, basically, of the FBI's active shooter trainings, essentially. When you look at what you've seen on the ground in Boulder so far, does it follow, based on your sort of expert analysis here, does it seem to follow best practices? Does it look as though this investigation is, in fact, proceeding by the book as it should?
Yeah, I think that, I was the FBI's executive in charge of the active shooter program for 5 years and did write the FBI's research on active shooters and these types of shootings, and still working on that, obviously, now. And I think that what we saw today is a pretty indicative of what we've seen in progress over the years. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, after Sandy Hook, there were just a lot of questions about what the priorities should be. And now I think when I see a response now, I see the police officers went in right away. This is an incredibly volatile situation for law enforcement, the most volatile situation they can deal with on their daily travels. But the law enforcement here did exactly what we have been training them to do for the last several years, especially since Sandy Hook. And
Katherine,
and so I think
thank you so much. I'm sorry, Katherine.
I understand.
Go ahead and finish your sentence here, Katherine.
I think that also we saw the civilian response, and that's probably the most encouraging, is that we saw the run, hide, fight, encouraging responses from everybody. They're running, and that's what we need them to do to stay alive.